I stood in the rain staring at my soaked suitcase on the curb and realized my own flesh and blood had just thrown me out onto the street. At 72, for the first time in my life, I was completely alone. But it was in that moment I discovered who I truly am. Dear viewers, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. The sound of the slamming door still echoes in my ears, not a simple click. No, it was the strike of a hammer on an anvil, the final chord of a symphony of betrayal my own son had been composing for months. "Mom, you can't live here anymore," Jason said, not even meeting my eyes as he dragged my worn suitcase onto the porch. "You've become a burden to our family." A burden. That word cut deeper than any knife. Me, the woman who raised this boy single-handedly after his father's death, who worked double shifts at a factory in Detroit to pay for his college. Me, who sold her own home to help him buy this beautiful 2-story house in a Michigan suburb. "Jason, please," I whispered, feeling cold raindrops slide down my cheeks, mingling with my tears. "Where will I go?" My daughter-in-law, Kimberly, appeared in the doorway, arms crossed. Her perfectly styled blonde hair wasn't touched by a single drop of rain. She was sheltered by the porch overhang while I stood exposed to the elements. "Donna," she said with that fake sweetness she always used when she wanted to seem caring in front of the neighbors. "We've discussed this. You have a sister in Florida. It's time to reconnect with family." "I haven't spoken to Carol in over 15 years, I cried, my voice breaking with desperation. "You know that, Kimberly." "Well," she shrugged, as if we were talking about the weather, "then you'll have to figure something out. We can't take care of you anymore." Take care of me? I cooked for them every day, cleaned their house, watched their kids when they went away for weekends. I paid for utilities out of my meager pension. What care? "Son," I turned to Jason, pleading with my eyes, "don't you remember how I—" "Enough!" he exploded, and I saw something cold, unfamiliar in his eyes. "Enough with the manipulation, Mom. You should have saved for your old age instead of living off us." Living off them. I gave them every cent of my savings when they bought this house. I left myself with nothing but a tiny Social Security check. The rain grew heavier, turning into a downpour. Water seeped through my thin jacket, my gray hair plastered to my head. My suitcase, old and battered, was soaked through. "Please," I whispered one last time, but the door had already slammed shut. I stood there for a few more minutes, unable to believe what was happening. The house I'd lived in for the past 3 years, where I helped raise my grandchildren, was no longer my home. The windows glowed with warm yellow light, but that warmth was now beyond my reach. Neighbors started peeking out from their windows. Mrs. Collins, from across the street, opened her door briefly but quickly shut it when she saw me looking. No one wanted to get involved in a family matter. I grabbed my waterlogged suitcase, it was heavy with rain, and started walking down the street. To where? I didn't know. In my pocket, I had $27 and a phone with a dying battery. By evening, I found myself under a bridge on Rue 75. Yes, under a bridge, like a homeless person. I never imagined my life would come to this. Trucks roared overhead, their headlights occasionally illuminating my makeshift shelter of cardboard and old blankets someone had left behind. I sat on my suitcase, knees pulled to my chest, and cried. Cried from humiliation, from loneliness, from the realization that the son I loved so dearly could be so cruel. That first night, I didn't sleep. Every sound made me jump. I thought about Jason as a little boy, how he'd cling to me during thunderstorms, how I'd read him bedtime stories. Where was that boy? What had happened to him? The next morning, I tried to find work at 72. Can you imagine? I went to every cafe and shop in the area, but the answer was always the same. Sorry, we're not hiring people your age. They didn't say it outright, but I saw it in their eyes. By the third day under the bridge, I ran out of money for food. I drank from a public fountain in the park and ate free samples at the supermarket. My clothes reeked of dampness and exhaust fumes. That's when Carol showed up. I didn't recognize her at first. 15 years is a long time, and my younger sister had changed. Her gray hair was elegantly styled. Her expensive suit fit her perfectly. She stood next to a sleek silver Lexus, staring at me with a mix of shock and horror. "My God, Donna!" Her voice trembled. What are you doing here?" I tried to stand, but my legs gave out. 3 days with barely any food or sleep on concrete had taken their toll. "Carol?" I whispered. How did you find me?" She ran to me, ignoring the puddles and mud. "I was driving to Detroit for business and decided to stop by your place. Jason told me—" Her face twisted with anger. "That bastard said you'd gone to Florida to visit me. I've been calling you for 3 days, but your phone was off." "Battery died," I mumbled, feeling dizzy. "Donna, honey, what happened?" Carol wrapped her arms around me and I sobbed on her shoulder, feeling human warmth for the first time in those awful days. I told her everything, how Jason and Kimberly had gradually started treating me like a servant, how they told the kids to ignore their old and annoying grandmother, how they threw me out in the rain. Carol listened, her eyes hardening. "This ends now," she said firmly. "You're coming with me to Florida, right now." "Carol, I can't. We fought because of some stupid argument 15 years ago." She helped me stand. "Donna, you're my only sister. I should have reached out sooner. I'm sorry." Our fight had been over Mom's estate after her funeral, a silly dispute about who'd get her house. Back then, it felt so important to prove I was right. Now I saw how trivial it was. "But you have your own life." "I have a big house in Clearwater and I'm lonely," she said, lifting my wet suitcase. "Besides, I need help with my business. I'm not just inviting you to live with me. I'm offering you a job." Her car was warm and smelled of expensive perfume. I sank into the soft leather seat and closed my eyes. For the first time in days, I felt safe. "Carol," I said quietly as we pulled onto the highway, "what if Jason changes his mind? What if he changes his mind?" Her voice turned icy. "He'll have to deal with me, and trust me, that won't be easy." The drive to Florida took 2 days. We stayed in nice hotels where I could take hot baths and eat real food. Carol told me about her life. She divorced her husband 10 years ago, got a hefty settlement, started a small real estate consulting firm, and was doing quite well. "And kids?" I asked. "Didn't happen," she said with a sad smile. "Robert didn't want them, and by the time I realized I did, it was too late. But you know what? Now I have you." Carol's house in Clearwater was a work of art, big, bright, with huge windows overlooking the bay. Palm trees swayed in her yard, and the air smelled of salt water and jasmine. "This is your room." She showed me a spacious bedroom with its own bathroom and a view of the water. "Decorate it however you want. This is your home now." Your home. How long had it been since I'd heard those words spoken to me with sincerity? For the first few weeks, I was cautious, afraid of becoming a burden here too. But Carol patiently showed me I was needed. Her consulting firm specialized in helping seniors buy and sell homes, and my life experience turned out to be invaluable. "Look," she said one morning, showing me letters from clients, "they all say how understanding and wise you are. You're not just working here, Donna. You're changing people's lives." And it was true. In my first 3 months, I helped a dozen seniors find suitable homes, navigate the complex mortgage system for retirees, and most importantly, listen to their fears and doubts. Many of them were going through what I had: rejection by their children, loss of independence, fear of an uncertain future. One of my first clients was 80-year-old Esther Blum. She came to us in tears. Her daughter wanted to put her in a nursing home and sell the family house where Esther had lived for 50 years. "I don't want to die in an institution surrounded by strangers," she sobbed, but Rebecca says she has no choice. I spent the whole day with Esther. We toured several small apartments near her old neighborhood and found a lovely place 15 minutes walk from her old home with a beautiful view of a park. But more importantly, I helped her talk to her daughter. "Rebecca," I said over the phone, "your mother isn't an object you can just move around. She has needs, dreams, fears. Let's find a solution that works for everyone." The conversation wasn't easy, but we reached a compromise. Esther moved into her new apartment, and Rebecca hired a caregiver who came twice a week. Their relationship began to mend. 6 months later, Esther sent me a card. "Donna, you didn't just save my life. You saved my relationship with my daughter. Thanks to you, we're a family again." There were many stories like hers. 75-year-old Frank, who wanted to move closer to the ocean after his wife's death. 85-year-old Miriam, who needed to sell her big house and find something smaller that could still hold all her books and cats. Each case was unique. Each person needed not just professional help, but understanding. I realized I'd found my calling. At 72, when most people are long retired, I discovered a gift I never knew I had. I could listen. I could understand. I knew what it was like to be rejected by your own children, to lose everything, and to start over. Carol was thrilled with my success. "You know," she said one evening as we sat on the porch, sipping wine and watching the sunset over the bay, "I think it's time we expanded, open a branch in Tampa, maybe another in Orlando." "Seriously?" I was stunned. "But I've only just started." "Donna, in 1 year, you've become my firm's most successful agent. Clients specifically ask to work with you. You have a gift." A gift. At 73, I learned I had a gift. But the biggest change wasn't in my career. It was in me. For the first time, I understood that my worth didn't depend on being needed by others. I was valuable in my own right. My experience, my wisdom, my capacity for empathy, these made me unique. I stopped crying at night over Jason. The pain of his betrayal didn't vanish completely. I'm not sure it ever will. But it no longer defined my life. I learned to live without his approval, his love, his presence. Sometimes I thought about my grandchildren. Emily was 7 and Michael 9 when I was thrown out. They probably didn't even remember me now. That thought still hurt, but I learned to let go of what I couldn't change. Instead, I surrounded myself with a new family. My clients became my friends. Esther Blum invited me to family dinners. Frank taught me to play poker. Miriam gave me one of her cat's kittens, a ginger rascal named Sunny, who became my constant companion. Carol and I grew closer than ever. Our childhood fights seem so insignificant now. We spent evenings sharing memories of our parents, our unfulfilled dreams, and new dreams that could still come true. "Remember how Mom said life begins at 40? Carol laughed. "Turns out she was wrong. Life begins at 70. And she was right. At 73, I started truly living. Not for someone else, not for their approval, but for myself. There were tough days, of course, days when arthritis reminded me of my age, when loneliness hit like a heavy wave, when I wondered if I'd done the right thing by cutting ties with my past. But even on those days, I knew I'd made the right choice. 18 months after moving to Florida, something unexpected happened. Jason called. I recognized his voice instantly, though it sounded tired, broken. "Mom?" he said hesitantly. It's Jason." My heart skipped a beat. For a year and a half, I'd prepared for this call, rehearsed what I'd say. But when it finally came, the words vanished. "I know who you are," I said calmly. "Mom, I need to talk to you. Kimberly filed for divorce. She took the kids and moved to her mother's in California. I'm alone." I felt the old pain rising mixed with the maternal love that, it turned out, had never gone away. But I also felt something new, a quiet confidence in myself. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said sincerely. "Mom, I know I was awful to you. What I did, it was wrong. You didn't deserve that." "No," I agreed, "I didn't. I lost my job 3 months ago. The company downsized. The house we bought, I can't keep up with the mortgage. The bank is threatening foreclosure." I listened silently. Part of me, the part that had always been a mother first, wanted to say, "Come to me, son. We'll fix it." But the wiser part, the one that had learned to value herself, stayed quiet. "Mom," his voice trembled, "I know I have no right to ask, but can I come to you? Just for a while, until I get back on my feet." "Jason," I said gently, "what happened to you? What happened to the boy who brought me dandelions and said he loved me more than anything?" He went silent. Then I heard a sob. "I don't know, Mom. I really don't. Kimberly said that old people should be independent, that we didn't owe our parents anything. She said you were pretending to be helpless to manipulate us. And you believed her over me." "Yes." His voice was barely audible. "And I'll regret it for the rest of my life." I closed my eyes, feeling tears roll down my cheeks. Not from pain. The pain had dulled long ago. From regret for the lost time, the broken relationships, the grandchildren who'd grown up without their grandmother. "Jason," I said finally, "I forgive you, but I can't go back to how things were." "What do you mean?" "I mean, I'm no longer the woman who'll give up everything to save you from the consequences of your actions. I won't live to make you feel better." "Mom, please." "No, listen to me." There was steel in my voice I'd never heard before. "You threw me out like garbage. You let me sleep under a bridge. You told your children their grandmother didn't matter anymore. Those things have consequences. I've changed, Mom. I know I was wrong. Maybe. But I've changed too. I've learned to love myself, Jason. I've learned my life has value, whether or not I'm needed by someone else. But you're my mother. Yes, I'm your mother. And I'll always love you, but I won't let that love destroy me again." He was silent for a long time. Then he asked, "So what do I do?" "The same thing I did when you threw me out," I said. "Find a way to survive on your own. Go to a social services center. Look for a job. Find a cheap apartment. Start over." "But I'm your son." "Exactly. You're my son, and I want you to learn to be strong. I won't do you a disservice by letting you depend on me again." "And the kids? Emily and Michael? You love them." That hit hard. I did love my grandchildren. I miss them every day. "If you've truly changed," I said, "if you really understand what you did wrong, then fight for them. Don't let Kimberly take them away from their father, but do it yourself without my help." "Mom," "Jason, I'm not saying never. I'm saying not now. Maybe someday we can rebuild our relationship, but first you have to prove to yourself, not to me, that you can be someone I can respect." After I hung up, I sat in silence for a long time. Carol found me on the porch an hour later. "He called?" she asked softly. "Yes." "How do you feel?" I thought about it. How did I feel? Sad, yes, but also strong. For the first time, I'd put my needs above my son's. For the first time, I hadn't let maternal love turn me into a victim. "Right," I said finally. "I feel right." Jason called a few more times over the next few months. Each time, he asked for help, and each time, I gently but firmly refused. I offered emotional support. I listened to his fears, his plans, his struggles with depression after the divorce. But I didn't give money, didn't offer a place to stay, didn't solve his problems for him. Gradually, his calls changed. He started telling me about a job he'd found, not prestigious, but enough to pay for a small apartment, about a therapist he'd started seeing, about how he was fighting for visitation rights with his kids. "You know, Mom," he said during one call, "my therapist says I never learned to be independent, that I always relied on women, first you, then Kimberly, to take care of my emotional needs. And what do you think about that?" "I think he's right, and I think you were right not to let me move in with you." That was the start of a new relationship between us, not as close as before, but more honest, more equal. 2 years after that call, Jason came to Florida, not to ask for money or a place to stay, but just to visit. He'd lost weight, aged. There was gray in his hair, but there was something new in his eyes. Calmness, self-assurance. "You look good, Mom," he said, hugging me at the airport. Happy. "I am happy," I said sincerely, and it was true. Over the past 3 years, I'd built a life I never dreamed possible. My work with senior clients had expanded. I wasn't just helping with real estate anymore, but also counseling families on bridging generational gaps. I was invited to speak at conferences, write articles for specialized magazines. During Jason's visit, we talked a lot. He told me about his therapy, about learning to be a better father during the short visits the court allowed with his kids, about a woman named Sarah he'd been dating for 6 months. "She's not like Kimberly," he said. "She's kind and she understands I made mistakes in the past." "And the kids?" I couldn't help but ask, "How are they?" His face lit up. "Emily's 10 now, she's into drawing. Michael's 12, he plays baseball. They asked about you." My heart skipped a beat. "Really?" "Kimberly told them you died," his voice filled with pain. "But recently, Emily found an old photo in my things from her 5th birthday with all of us together. She asked who the woman was who looked so much like her." I remembered that birthday. Emily in her pink princess dress, me baking her a castle-shaped cake. She sat on my lap when she made her wish. "What did you tell her?" "The truth. That it was their grandma Donna who Daddy hurt. That you're alive, and I hope to fix my mistakes someday." "And what did they say?" "Emily cried. Said Mom lied to her. And Michael." Jason paused, fighting tears. "Michael said he remembers you reading him night stories, that he missed your pancakes." I couldn't hold back my tears. All these years I'd tried not to think about my grandchildren, convincing myself they'd forgotten me. They hadn't. "Mom," Jason took my hands, "I know I have no right to ask, but could you write to them? Just a letter, so they know you remember and love them." I thought about his request for a long time. Part of me was afraid to open my heart to pain again, but the stronger part, the part that had grown over these years, knew the kids weren't to blame for their parents' mistakes. "Okay," I said finally, "but only letters, and only if they want to talk to me." That evening, I sat at my desk, trying to find words for children I hadn't seen in 4 years. How do you explain to a child why their grandmother vanished? How do you avoid blaming their mother while sparing them more pain? In the end, I wrote simply and honestly, "Dear Emily and Michael, your dad told me you asked about me. I want you to know I've thought about you every single day these past 4 years. I didn't disappear because I stopped loving you. I disappeared because of grown-up problems you shouldn't have to understand. Emily, my little artist, I remember how you drew me a rainbow with crayons. Michael, my brave knight, I remember how you protected me from dragons with your toy sword. You've grown so much, but in my heart, you're still the little ones who fell asleep on my lap during bedtime stories. I'm so proud of who you've become. If you want, we can write to each other. I'll tell you about where I live now, about my ginger cat Sunny, about the ocean I see from my window. You can tell me about school, your friends, your dreams. But if you don't want to, I'll understand. Sometimes grown-ups mess things up so badly they can't be fixed. Just know one thing. I love you more than all the stars in the sky. Your grandma, Donna P.S. Emily. I included a photo of your castle cake from your 5th birthday. Michael, remember the book about Sir Gareth? I found the sequel if you want to read it. Jason delivered the letter to his kids and arranged the exchange with Kimberly. She was against it, but the court ruled the kids had the right to contact their grandmother if they wanted. 2 weeks later, I got 2 letters, one in childish handwriting, decorated with rainbows and butterflies, the other in neater, more grown-up script. "Dear Grandma Donna," Emily wrote, "I'm so glad you're not dead. Mom said you went to heaven with Grandpa, but I missed you anyway. Tell me about Sunny the cat. I have a cat too. His name is Fluffy. I drew you a picture of our house. Are you far away? Can you come to my birthday?" "Grandma," Michael wrote, "I remember Sunday pancakes and the night books. Dad said you guys fought, but he knows he was wrong now. I'm 13, not little anymore. But I still want you to know I remember you, and I miss you. Please send the Sir Gareth sequel." I cried over those letters, tears of joy. My grandchildren remembered me. They wanted to connect. After all the broken relationships, all the pain and betrayal, love had survived. We started writing weekly. I told them about my life in Florida. They told me about school, friends, hobbies. Emily sent me drawings. Michael sent essays about baseball and adventures. I mailed them books, small gifts, photos of sunsets over the bay. Eventually, we moved to video calls. Seeing their faces after 4 years, Emily looked like me as a child. Same gray eyes, same freckles. Michael had grown into a serious teenager, but when he smiled, I saw the little boy I used to hold. "Grandma Donna," Emily said during one call, "when can I see you?" Like, for real, not on a screen. It was a tough question. Kimberly still opposed in-person visits, afraid of losing control over the kids, but they were growing up, making their own choices. "Soon, sweetheart," I promised. Soon. The chance came for Michael's 14th birthday. Jason had finally won extended visitation rights. The kids could spend summer break with him. He suggested they spend it in Florida with their grandmother. I prepared for their visit like it was the most important event of my life. Carol helped me set up rooms for the kids, buy everything they'd need. I planned every day, beach trips, the aquarium, theme parks. But the most important thing was just being with them, making the pancakes Michael remembered, reading with Emily to the sound of the waves, listening to their stories, answering their questions, loving them with the unconditional love that had never faded. "Grandma," Emily asked on the first evening as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, "why did you leave back then? Why didn't you say goodbye?" I thought carefully about how to answer. In the end, I chose the truth, in words a child could understand. "Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes," I said. "Your dad thought it was best if I left, and I didn't know how to explain it to you without hurting you." "But we hurt anyway," Michael said seriously. "We thought you didn't love us anymore." "Oh, my dear," I hugged him. "I never stopped loving you, not for a second." "Are you going to leave again?" Emily asked anxiously. "No, sweetheart. Now we'll always stay in touch. You can call me whenever you want. Visit me, and I'll visit you." Those 2 weeks flew by like a dream. We did everything grandparents and grandkids should do. Built sandcastles, caught crabs in tidal pools, watched movies under one blanket. Emily taught me to draw mermaids. I taught her to cross-stitch. Michael told me about baseball and a girl named Caitlin he liked. When it was time for them to leave, we all cried. But these were different tears. Not bitter tears of separation, but bright tears of gratitude for the time we'd shared. "Bye, Grandma," Emily whispered, hugging me tightly. "I'll miss you." "I'll miss you too, sunshine, but now we know we'll see each other again." After they left, the house felt too quiet, but it was a good quiet, the quiet of fullness, not emptiness. I knew my bond with my grandchildren was restored for good. Over the next few months, our connection grew warmer and closer. The kids told me everything: school troubles, first crushes, future plans. I wasn't just a distant grandma they saw once a year. I was part of their lives. Emily got serious about drawing and dreamed of art school. Michael earned a baseball scholarship and planned to study engineering. I was prouder of them than words could express. My own life kept blossoming. At 75, I became a recognized expert in intergenerational relationships. Our firm with Carol was named Florida's Best for senior clients. I wrote a book, Second Life After 70, which became a bestseller among people my age. But most importantly, I was happy. Truly, deeply happy. I had meaningful work, a beautiful home, a loyal sister, wonderful friends, and a restored connection with my family. At 75, I finally understood what it meant to live for myself, not others' expectations. Of course, age made itself known. Arthritis worsened, my eyesight faded, and I couldn't work as intensely as before. But I learned to accept my body's limitations without letting them limit my spirit. For my 77th birthday, I threw a big party. Jason and the kids came. Emily was 15, Michael 17. They brought Sarah, Jason's new wife, a kind, understanding woman who treated me like her own mother. All my client friends, colleagues, and neighbors came. Esther Blum, now 87, flew in from New York. Frank brought his new girlfriend, a 75-year-old widow named Gloria. Even Miriam showed up with her 4 cats in a special carrier. "Look at all these people," Carol said, pouring champagne. "All these people who love you. Aren't you glad you didn't stay in that gloomy Michigan house?" I looked around the room, filled with laughter, warmth, and love. My grandchildren were passing out snacks. Sonny strutted among the guests, accepting praise. Jason told jokes that made everyone laugh. "You know what's amazing?" I said to Carol. "I'm grateful to him, grateful to Jason for throwing me out." "What?" She nearly choked on her champagne. "Seriously. If he hadn't done that, I'd have lived out my days in the shadows, thinking my only value was in being useful to others. I'd never have known who I really am, what I'm capable of, how happy I could be." "You really believe that?" "Yes. That awful day in the rain was the end of one life and the start of another, a better one." When the guests left and the kids went to bed, I stepped onto the porch. It was quiet, only the sound of waves in the distance, stars reflected on the calm bay. Jason joined me. "Mom," he said softly, "I wanted to talk to you." "About what, son?" About that day, what I did. He sat beside me on the swing. I know you said you're grateful, but I'll never stop regretting it. I looked at my son. At 45, he'd become a good man, a caring father, a faithful husband, an honest worker. Therapy had helped him understand his mistakes and change. Jason, I said, taking his hand, we all make mistakes. What matters is what we learn from them. Can you forgive me? Truly? I was silent for a long time, thinking about the years that had passed, the pain and humiliation I'd endured, how I'd learned to live again, how our relationship had become more honest, more equal. I forgave you a long time ago, I said finally. Not for you, for me, because anger is a poison that harms the one who carries it. And do you still love me? I never stopped loving you, but now I love you differently, not with the blind maternal love that forgives everything, but with an adult love that sees your flaws and chooses to love you anyway, he cried. A grown man cried like a little boy. I missed you so much, Mom. All these years, I missed you. And I missed you, but sometimes separation is necessary for us both to grow. We sat in silence, listening to the waves. I thought about the strange ways of fate, how the worst day of my life led to the best years, how betrayal taught me loyalty to myself, how losing everything helped me find what truly mattered. Mom, Jason said, what have you learned these past years? What would you want to pass on to Emily and Michael? I smiled. It was a good question, an important one. I've learned that your worth doesn't depend on being needed by others, that loving yourself isn't selfish, it's necessary, that it's never too late to start over if you have the courage, that loneliness is better than living with people who don't value you, and that sometimes the greatest act of love is saying no. And I've learned that life doesn't end at 60, 70, or 80. It goes on as long as you're willing to truly live, not just exist. 2 days later, Jason and the kids left for Michigan. We planned to reunite for Christmas, this time with Sarah, too. Life settled back into its rhythm. Work, though, at a slower pace. Time with friends, tending my garden, reading on the porch with Sonny, who'd aged alongside me but still purred, curled up on my lap. Sometimes I thought about what lay ahead. At 77, I knew time was limited. But I wasn't afraid. I'd lived a full life. 2 full lives, really. The first as a daughter, wife, mother, always defined by my relationships with others. The second as an independent woman who knew her worth. I wrote a will, leaving most of my estate to my grandchildren for their education. To Jason, I left a letter reaffirming my forgiveness and love. To Carol, my gratitude for saving me in my darkest hour and giving me the chance to bloom. But mostly, I thought about life, not death. About the books I still wanted to read, the sunsets I wanted to see, the people I wanted to meet and help. On my 78th birthday, I received a letter from a reader of my book. A woman wrote, "Dear Donna, I'm 64. And my son just told me I'm a burden. I was thinking about suicide, but then I read your book. You showed me life doesn't end when your kids reject you. It can just begin. Because of you, I'm moving to a new city to start over. Thank you for showing me the way." I read that letter over and over, tears welling up each time, not tears of sadness, tears of gratitude. For my pain helping someone else, for my experience becoming a light in someone else's darkness. That's when I realized my story wasn't just mine. Somewhere out there were thousands of women my age who felt unwanted, a burden, used up, who didn't know that life at 70 could be better than at 30. I decided to write a second book, Not about starting over in old age, but about raising children so they don't reject you later. About building relationships based on mutual respect, not dependence. About loving without losing yourself. The book took 2 years. Carol helped with editing, my grandchildren with technology. Jason agreed to write a foreword, raw and painful, about his mistakes and their consequences. Years ago, he wrote, "I thought my mother existed only to serve me. I didn't see her as a person with her own needs, dreams, and right to respect. This book is about how much that blindness cost me and about the incredible, strong woman I nearly lost forever." Children who don't abandon their parents became even more popular than the first. I was invited to TV shows, radio, conferences across the country. At 80, I became a well-known author and speaker. But most importantly, the book helped people. I received hundreds of letters from parents and children who'd rebuilt their relationships after reading my story. From women who found the strength to demand respect. From men who realized their mothers weren't free maids. One letter touched me deeply. A young woman named Jennifer wrote, "Dear Mrs. Carter, I read your book and realized I was becoming the Jason in your story. I demanded my mother babysit for free, clean my house, cook meals, and I criticized her constantly. After your book, I invited her to lunch and apologized. We talked for hours, and for the first time in years, I saw her not as a free nanny, but as a person with her own feelings and needs. Thank you for stopping me before it was too late." Reading such letters, I knew my life had meaning, that all my suffering had led to something valuable. At 82, I still lived in my Clearwater home, though with a housekeeper's help. Carol, now 78, remained my best friend and business partner, though we'd handed most of the work to younger colleagues. Emily graduated from art school and became a successful designer. Michael earned an engineering degree and worked for an aviation company. Both were married and gave me great-grandchildren, little ones who called me Great-Grandma Donna and loved my mermaid and night stories. Jason became a grandfather at 50 and was a wonderful one. Patient, loving, never demanding the impossible from his kids. He often said he learned it from watching me with his children after our reunion. Sometimes, sitting on the porch watching the sunset over the bay, I thought about the strange path that brought me here, the rain in Michigan that washed away my old life, the days under the bridge that taught me to value every warm home, the sister who reached out in my darkest hour. All these years, I've kept that old photo from Emily's 5th birthday, the castle cake, her pink dress, our happy faces. It sits on my desk next to letters from my grandchildren and a stack of my books, a reminder of where I came from and how far I've come. That evening, sitting with Jason on the porch, I realized my story didn't end when I forgave my son or reconnected with my grandchildren. It ended when I understood my life belonged to me, that I wasn't just a mother, grandmother, or sister, but Donna Carter, a woman who, at 72, found the strength to start from scratch and build a life full of meaning, love, and respect. I looked at the stars reflecting on the bay and thought of the woman who once stood in the rain with a soaked suitcase. She was scared, broken, lost. But even then, she carried a spark waiting to ignite, a spark that grew into a flame, warming not just me, but everyone who read my books, heard my talks, shared this incredible second life. "Mom," Jason said, interrupting my thoughts, "you're smiling. What are you thinking about?" "How strange life is," I said. "Sometimes the darkest days lead to the brightest years." He nodded, looking at the sea. "I'm glad you found your light, Mom." "And I'm glad you found yours, son." We fell silent, but it was a comfortable silence. The silence of two people who'd walked through pain and forgiveness to become family again. A silence filled with love, respect, and understanding. My story didn't end that evening. It continued in every new day, in letters from readers, calls from grandchildren, morning beach walks with Sonny, who, despite his age, still chased crabs. It continued in every sunset I greeted with gratitude for being alive, needed, and true to myself. And if I could go back to that Donna standing in the rain in Michigan, I'd tell her, hold on. Your best day is still ahead. You're stronger than you know, and your story is just beginning. My story could have ended there, but life, as I've learned, never puts a period. At 83, I received an unexpected letter from Kimberly. After years of silence, she asked to meet, saying she wanted to make amends for the past. She was living in California, raising the kids alone after her divorce from Jason. I debated whether to respond. Part of me still remembered the coldness in her eyes as she shut the door on me, but the part that had learned to forgive for my own peace decided to give her a chance. We met at a cafe on the Clearwater waterfront. Kimberly looked older than I remembered. Lines around her eyes, a tired gaze. She fidgeted with a napkin as we waited for coffee. "Donna," she began, "I don't know how to start. I was a terrible person to you. I convinced Jason you were a burden, that you were ruining our lives. I was young, selfish, and scared." "Scared?" I asked, surprised. "Yes. You were so strong. You always knew what to do, how to talk to the kids, how to keep the house in order. I felt inadequate next to you. Instead of learning from you, I chose to get rid of you." Her words caught me off guard. I'd never seen myself as strong back then. I saw myself as a victim of circumstance, a woman sacrificing everything for her family. "Kimberly," I said gently, "why are you reaching out now?" She looked down. "Because I've lost everything." Jason moved on. The kids grew up and drifted away from me. I realized I'm repeating your mistake, living for others, forgetting myself. Then I read your book, and I saw how wrong I was. I stayed silent, waiting. "I want to fix things with the kids," she said, "and I know you're part of their lives. They love you, Donna. They talk about you with such warmth. I want you in my life too, not for me, but for them. And maybe you can teach me how to be like you, strong, independent." It was a twist I hadn't expected. Kimberly, the woman who threw me out, was now asking for my help. Yet there was something sincere in her words, something that reminded me of myself years ago. "Kimberly," I said, "I don't hold a grudge, but fixing things with the kids is work you'll have to do yourself. I can be there, I can support you, but you have to walk the path." She nodded, her eyes shining with tears. "I understand. Just thank you for meeting me." We talked for another hour. I told her about my grandchildren, how they'd grown, what they dreamed of. She listened eagerly, as if trying to catch up on lost years. In the end, I gave her advice. How to start an honest conversation with Emily and Michael, how to show them she'd changed. "And you know," I added, "if you need help, call. Not because I owe you, but because I believe in new beginnings." After that meeting, we stayed in touch, not often but regularly. Kimberly visited Florida to see the kids, and sometimes we met as a trio, me, her, and Jason, to discuss how to best support Emily and Michael. It wasn't a perfect family harmony, but it was something real, honest. By 85, my life had slowed. I no longer spoke at conferences or wrote books, but I still counseled people over the phone. My porch remained my sanctuary, where I spent evenings with Carol reminiscing about old times and planning new adventures. One evening, Carol said, "Donna, You know you're my hero? Oh, stop, I laughed. I'm just an old woman who survived a few tough years. No, she said seriously. You're a woman who showed the world that age isn't a sentence, that you can start over at any age if you have courage and heart. I smiled, looking at the stars. You know, Carol, I think my heart is my secret. It broke, but it never stopped loving. And maybe that's what makes us human. That night, I went to bed with a deep sense of peace. My life was full, not perfect, but full. Full of love, forgiveness, new beginnings, and lessons I'd passed on to others. And if I could go back to that day in the rain in Michigan, I'd hug that frightened woman with the soaked suitcase and say, "You'll make it. You'll become more than you ever dreamed. Just take one step, then another." I knew she'd believe me, because I am her and she is me. Donna Carter, the woman who, at 72, learned who she truly was and never stopped learning to be herself. Dear viewers, if you enjoyed the story, give it a like and share your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you won't miss new exciting stories. See you tomorrow.